first of all stand up, and then once you've stood up, I'd like you to go and find someone who you haven't met yet, and I'd like you to introduce yourself to them. Simply say hello, where you're from, and why you're here. Firstly, thank you for doing that. The reason that I asked you to do it was that simply breaking down barriers can be as easy as going and saying hello to someone you've never met before. Sometimes the simplest things are the most effective. As I said, I want to thank Inaki for the invitation to come here and to speak to you. I want to thank him and yourselves for the hospitality and the welcome that I've been shown so far. It's very much appreciated. This is an exciting time for the Basque Rugby Union, and it's great to have the opportunity to come here and to share some of our experiences and to also learn from yourselves and from the other speakers as to what's happening in this region and in other areas. So hopefully by the end of my presentation you'll get a little bit more information as to some of the programmes that we've developed within Ulster and within Ireland. Rugby on the island of Ireland is governed by the Irish Rugby Football Union, the IRFU, and there are 4 provincial branches, each of which is responsible for the development of the game within its own province in line with IRFU policies. And my colleague Colin is going to talk about that in more depth tomorrow. Rugby on the island of Ireland, as I said, is split up into the 4 provinces. And just to give you an idea of where the 4 provinces are, you can see from the map there with regards to the different colours. And Iñaki has already used my map in terms of explaining the national boundaries. So the relationship between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And it's important to note that in relation to Ulster and Ulster Rugby, Ulster relates to 9 counties within Ireland, 6 of which are within Northern Ireland, and 3 of which are in the Republic of Ireland. You're probably all aware that Northern Ireland is now in a period of stability after many years of troubles, and that's been obviously great to see. It has aided with the development of Northern Ireland, it has aided with the development of understanding between different communities. There's still a lot of work needs to be done, but where we are now is a far better place than where we have been 30, 40 years ago. For me to explain to you the political situation in Northern Ireland in a 20-minute presentation would be nigh on impossible. So what I want to do is to give you a general feel for it, but I want you to understand that it is a very complex issue, and what I'm going to give you is just an example, so please don't take it as the absolute truth. For the purposes of my presentation, I think it's important for you to understand that within Northern Ireland there are 2 main religions. There are Protestants and there are Catholics. And in terms of the split is almost even 50-50 between people who would consider themselves to be Protestant and people who would consider themselves to be Catholic. Again, talking generally, people who would consider themselves to be Protestant would align themselves with the British government based in London. And so for them, the emblem which they see as most representing them is the British flag, the Union Jack flag. For people who see themselves as Catholic, they would see themselves aligning themselves with the government in Dublin, okay, and that is represented by the Irish flag, the tricolour. Now that is very much a generalisation, and there are people who consider themselves to be Protestant who would align themselves with the Republic of Ireland, and people who see themselves as Catholic and align themselves with the United Kingdom. But that's in terms of rugby in Ulster, there are a number of challenges. First and foremost, this idea that rugby within the province of Ulster is played across 2 jurisdictions. So we have some of the clubs in Ulster based in the Republic of Ireland and some of our clubs based in Northern Ireland. This creates issues with regards to different legislation and different legal frameworks. So for example, similar issues relating to child protection are dealt with in a different way in both jurisdictions. Also, access to funding and our schooling systems are different on both sides of the border. So in terms of developing a game or developing a sport, we have to take into consideration the fact that policies are different on both sides of the border. And this is an aspect which sometimes our policymakers in rugby find difficult to understand, both in Dublin in terms of applying policy within Northern Ireland, but also in Belfast, where policymakers find it difficult to apply policy which is appropriate for the clubs which are in the Republic of Ireland, in the three border counties as we call them, and that can create problems. It also means that because of the differences in legal framework and in legislation, that the pace of development is not equal across the province. So, for example, quite recently, we've had access to funding for rugby clubs and rugby schools in Northern Ireland, which clubs in the Republic of Ireland have not had access to. And they have seen the development of new facilities, floodlighting, pitches, changing rooms, which hasn't applied across into the other countries, so into the other counties. So that creates a difficulty, and can lead to jealousy, which can sometimes be very hard to manage from our point of view as a governing body. The development of rugby in Ulster has also been influenced by our school system, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. But again, I made reference to the fact that there's a split between Protestants and Catholics within Northern Ireland. In terms of education, there's also a similar split in that Catholics and Protestants are educated in different systems. So that has an impact in terms of the development of the game. And finally, it's also important to note that both from the RFU point of view and from an Ulster Rugby point of view, we both share the common goal of growing the number of people in playing rugby union. And it's very important that in any work that we do, and where there are differences, that we keep relating it back to this common vision and common goal, that what we all want to achieve is to have more people playing the game and to increase the growth in the game. So hopefully you'll be able to follow my diagram. If we start on the left-hand side, we have education in Northern Ireland. And as I said, our education is generally split into two streams. Pupils who attend schools which are influenced by the Catholic Church, and pupils who attend schools who are influenced by Protestant Church. Over the last number of years, there's been a growing number of schools in what's called the integrated sector, where religion does not predominate, where kids are treated equally regardless of what religious background they come from. And this is a growing sector within Northern Ireland and reflects probably the aspirations that people have for a more understanding society. Within our school system, we have academic selection at the age of 11, so pupils undergo a test, and depending on the results of those tests, either go into a grammar school, which is for pupils who are more academically minded, or you go into a high school where kids will learn more around trades and follow a different curriculum. Depending on which school stream you follow and how you perform academically, that will then determine the sport that you're most likely to play. So from the point of view, if you attend a Catholic school and you do well academically, you're most likely to play Gaelic games, such as Gaelic football or hurling, or soccer. If you attend a Catholic high school, similarly, it'll be Gaelic games or soccer. If you're a Protestant and you attend a high school, more than likely you will play soccer. And if you're a Protestant and you do academically well and attend a grammar school, your choice will be rugby or hockey. So from our point of view, as a governing body, where our game has developed has been out of Protestant high schools. That is traditionally where rugby within Ulster has come from. To reflect in terms of Gaelic games, as Inaki mentioned earlier on, this is strongly aligned to Irish culture and very much based around people's understanding of their nationality and their desire to be aligned to what's happening in Southern Ireland. So again, this is a challenge for us as a governing body. So as a result of the education system, there are perceptions around Ulster, and particularly rugby in Ulster. So as you can see from the previous diagram, the opportunity to play the game of rugby, the perception is that it's only available to a small number of schools. In fact, there are 32 rugby playing grammar schools, and that would be the perception where our rugby players are coming from. Okay. Further perception would be that the game is only played by middle-class Protestant males. Those pupils who have excelled academically and been able to go into a school that provides that opportunity to play the game. This therefore leads to the assumption that the game is not accessible to those people of a different religion or indeed people of a different gender, because the game is not offered within those schools. There would also be a perception within Northern Ireland that rugby clubs have excellent facilities and that they only cater for their existing players, that they're not part of the wider community and that they don't integrate with other services and other people within those communities. And also, because of the nature of the game and that it's a middle class game, that from a government point of view there's not a requirement to invest within the sport, because the sport looks after itself through sponsorship and through investment by other people. A final point which I haven't put up, but again a perception that people have had, is that rugby is seen by some people in Northern Ireland as being British, and that can be problematic in terms of a society such as Northern Ireland, where identity is very important, and if you're looking to reach out to other people in other cultures, depending on where your national identity is, it can create issues. That's the perception. Now for the reality. Over the last number of years, there's been significant investment in the numbers of development staff, both by the Irish Rugby Football Union as a national governing body, but also from an Ulster Rugby point of view, and in particular our professional game, who have started to invest some of the money that they have generated back into the game, because they see the importance of us building a base and getting more players playing the game, because that will lead to greater success further down the line. Interestingly, our clubs have also invested in development staff, because they see the need to get out and to promote themselves within the community and to provide opportunities for children and other people to play the game. Part of our ongoing development and delivery of programs that give children the opportunity to play the game are programs such as our community rugby scheme, where we put development officers out into schools. Their role is to engage with children, get them to play the game, try the game, similarly to the video that we just saw. That video could have been lifted from sessions anywhere in Ireland. Same ideas, same principles. But what we do as well is that we then create the link back into the club. So the children get the taster, they get the session, they get a feel and interest in the game, and then we provide a pathway for them to continue that interest. I mentioned earlier in my presentation that there's a perception that rugby is only played in 32 grammar schools. The reality in Ulster is that we have over 115 secondary schools of both Protestant and Catholic ethos affiliated to the Ulster branch. So we're actually, our spread is a lot wider than people would consider. As a result of the work that we've done within our traditional, or our non-traditional schools as we call them, we've seen a growth over the last 5 years in our youth teams at under 13, under 15, under 17 and under 19 level, a growth of over 48%, which is significant. The other added bonus of those youth teams is that we draw children from across the cultural divide, if you want to describe it as that, and it gives the opportunity for children to come together, to meet each other, to mix and to learn from one another. One of the great opportunities for us to get into schools has been around this issue of the values of rugby, and it's been mentioned in every presentation so far today. So I think it's important to understand that the values of rugby are universal, and regardless of whether you're in this area, in France or in Ireland, it's the values of the game which are held true. And it's very often those values which other sports and other organisations are very envious of. And I think from our point of view in developing rugby, that it's important we don't lose sight of those values. I just want to draw your attention to the photograph that we have on the screen there. The photograph is from a school called Omagh Christian Brothers in County Tyrone. This would be a traditionally very strong Gaelic football school. They would feature in finals at all levels and are very proud of their Gaelic football roots. But they have seen rugby as a way of gaining a competitive edge on other schools, and they're quite happy for rugby to come in, and they're quite happy for their players to play rugby, because they find that it promotes discipline within their players, it promotes a sense of confidence and a sense of self-control that maybe isn't always there in terms of Gaelic football or soccer. So rather than seeing us necessarily as a competitor, they see us as something which can help them achieve their goals as well.